So let's talk about how to discipline a teenager. I'm Nicholeen Peck and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And I have raised a lot of teenagers. Let's talk about discipline. In this video, we're going to talk about why it's difficult to discipline teenagers, or maybe what kind of mental blocks that we give ourselves that we shouldn't do, and then what key skills or strategies can we use to help discipline teenagers that will actually work, that they'll respond to. So one thing you need to know about me is for many years I did therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens. So all of the teens were between the ages of 12 and 18. For many years I took these youth into my home. Most of them were neurodiverse. All of them had some sort of attachment or trauma issues, but there were also ODD, ADHD, RAD, autism spectrum, a variety there, bipolar disorder, sensory issues, all kinds of processing differences, and I would help them during their teen years. And there's something that I can tell you is the things that we did for those neurodiverse youth in their teen years work also for neurotypical teens. Even young children, the same skills actually work. So all of my children that are now adults were neurotypical, but they used all of these same skills and were very, very successful in their communications and in their own self-discipline, which I call self-government. So what is self-government? Self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them. So that means that the emphasis is on teens or children or anyone being able to have enough self-awareness and desire to control themselves that they actually take the responsibility to control themselves, to communicate effectively, and thereby be able to solve their problems better. Now that's what our teens need as they're getting ready to launch into the world, as they're wanting more autonomy. They need skills so that they can be successful in their lives. And that's actually what this channel is all about. Now, just to be completely transparent, I do not love the word teenager. I feel like it's a derogatory term, and this is because it actually used to be a derogatory term. Back in the day, in like maybe the 50s or 60s, people were called youth, young man, young woman, and then suddenly the birth of the teenager happened. I'm thinking maybe the greasers at the time started this kind of delinquent behavior, and suddenly there was a derogatory term that was used for them called teenager. And so I don't try to use that term very often. So if you hear me say youth or even child, I'm really referring to teens. I don't like the idea of having to become a teenager because teenagers are people that want adult perks and benefits without any of the responsibility. But a youth or a young man or a young woman, they want all of the responsibility of adulthood so that they can get the perks, so that they can earn their place in society. That's totally different than being a teenager. And so I just don't celebrate that word very much. Okay, so let's talk about raising teens. Why is it difficult when youth are struggling with their behaviors? Well, because we hope that as they get older and older, that they'll have more responsibility and they'll become more mature, so their behaviors will become less and less. But in reality, as they're going through puberty and their prefrontal cortexes are developing more than they have before, they're also getting more emotional triggering that's happening because of all the hormonal activity that's developing the brain. So they've got a lot of hormones that are changing things within them. There's so many changes because their prefrontal cortex is more developed, because their bodies are developing more muscles. They can do more things. Suddenly they're given more opportunities. We want them to start, taking on some of these big challenges. So they start thinking that they should be able to be autonomous, but they're not. autonomous. And this is, very apparent in some of the poor decisions that are actually made, which means that they still do need some training, some learning, some consequences, some discipline. So when I took youth into my home, I taught them cause and effect, because that's the recipe of self-government. That meant that there were good consequences and there were bad consequences. They knew what those consequences were ahead of time, and then they made the decisions accordingly. Now, when the youth came to my home, one of the first things I did was teach them what was called the 4 basic skills. So the 4 basic skills is a package or set of skills that are 4 skills that take care of 99% of their behavioral problems, help them be understood, and help them learn to do some self-direction, help them to choose calmness on a regular basis. These skills are absolutely liberating. So, what are the 4 basic skills of self-government? The 4 basic skills of self-government are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. When a person can follow an instruction from you or from themselves, they can be motivated. They can solve their problems, take action steps moving forward. Super important. There are 5 steps to following an instruction, which are to look at the person or the situation, keep a calm face, voice, and body, say okay or ask to disagree appropriately, do the task immediately, and then check back. When a person can do that, it usually keeps the roles in the right place, which is often one of the struggles that youth face when they are being parented, is really trying to understand what their role is. So this brings me to this book. I've actually written 11 books. This is one of them. It's called Roles: The Secret to Family, Business, and Social Success. And it's actually a storybook, so it's a case study. It's a story of a family, and they have some struggles with not having good connection and relationships, not helping each other out, a little bit too much technology getting in the way, those types of things. And in the story, you see how they come to a place where they understand each other's roles and how important that is at fixing all of those problems in the relationship and in just the family culture at home. So this is a great book to read aloud as a family, or your youth could read it. They could have these conversations with you, or you could just read it and have the conversations that these parents have with their children as well. Look for Roles: The Secret to Family, Business, and Social Success. So there are 3 other skills, remember, that are part of the 4 basic skills. Those skills are to accept no answers and criticism, to accept consequences, and to disagree appropriately. When a person disagrees appropriately, they do a 7-step process that helps them seek to understand, then to be understood. When a person accepts consequences, they take ownership for their own decisions, whether they did follow instructions or disagree appropriately or accepted a no answer, or whether they didn't. And they recognize that their choices have consequences. This is a very maturing process. If parents don't give their children the opportunity to be corrected and earn negative consequences, then they actually could be damaging their ability to be fully free and self-governing later in life. It's super important. We shouldn't coddle our children too much. And then, of course, accepting no answers. There's just a lot of different disappointments in life, things we're not going to be perfect at first, and things that people have to tell us no for because there's boundaries. And that's where accepting no answers come in. Just like following instructions, every one of those skills has a skill set attached to it, so certain steps that they follow. But what I really like to focus on here is actually how to correct things when they go wrong. So if they're not using those 4 basic skills, what do you do to correct it or to get it back on track? So when your teenager has decided they don't care, whatever, mom, they're going to have an attitude. That's not having a calm face, voice, and body. And in all 4 of those 4 basic skills, one of the steps, step number 2 in every one of those skills, is to have a calm face, voice, and body. Do they know what that is? You need to pre-teach that to them ahead of time. Practice having a calm face, voice, and body, and then teach them what you will do if they choose not to. What I do if they choose not to have a calm face, voice, and body, or any of the other steps as part of any of those 4 basic skills, is I choose to do what I call an effective correction. An effective correction is a calm, non-emotional correction that helps them be able to analyze themselves and recognize cause and effect so that they can accept their consequences and move on. Now, I know some people think, you don't understand my teen. They are not going to accept any consequences. Well, just bear with me, because this is a full system. It's a full process. This is not like just one thing fixes everything, okay? So first we start with the effective correction, which has 7 steps to it. You describe the situation, you give a rationale for why it wasn't a good choice, you explain what they should have done, and then you tell them what consequence they earned. Now, my favorite consequences are the ones that build character. Work is the antidote for a sick character, so using extra chores is a really great way to help them learn cause and effect, and then they have to do something in order to accept their consequence, which is part of learning self-government. Now, I have an app, it's called the TSG app. It's free online, and you can access that app for other helps from me completely for free, but also there's something on there called a job jar, which can give you extra chores when you need them in the moment. You just type in the age of the person, you make a little profile for them, so then when they need an extra job, you put in how long you want it to take, you push to find jobs, and it'll get you like 3 jobs. If you don't like it, you shake it up and you get 3 more jobs. Super easy, so that you can help them earn the negative consequences that they need in order to be successful. You tell them what consequence they earned, and then they get the opportunity to say okay and accept that consequence and go and actually do it. Either before they go do the consequence or afterward, it's a good idea to do 3 practices. So we role play practice whatever skill or step to the skill that they missed before, so that they have an opportunity to actually practice things the right way. Now, if they're in their teen years, they may not need months and months of these types of role play practices, but for a while, at first, just go through it. Do the proactive practices. They need to learn that that practice is also part of the correction, and that they've got to do things and learn things the right way, even if they're resistant to it. Now, you're going to praise them every single time they do those practices. You're also going to praise them when you do a correction. Now, what if your child chooses not to accept a correction? What if they go completely out of control, they get emotionally withdrawn, or maybe even angry? What do you do then? So there's 5 teaching styles that I teach parents, and one of those teaching styles is actually called intensive teaching. When a child is becoming dysregulated, that's when we use the intensive teaching skill. So there's something called the rule of 3 that I teach in my TSG parenting course, which goes through how to help a person go from dysregulation to being regulated, what choices, what thoughts that they may need to have, what scripts that you can use to prompt them to get to that place of choosing regulation again. So that rule of 3 structure is really a pivotal moment that helps them engage that prefrontal cortex, which has a lot of abilities right now in these adolescent years, and then choose to find that calmness. That's the whole point of that intensive teaching. Now, calmness is really the baseline of all of it. If your child is not able to choose calmness, if they don't understand calmness, then I highly recommend my Calm Parenting Toolkit, which is free on my website, teachingselfgovernment.com. It's right on the homepage right now. This Calm Parenting Toolkit is not a full course about self-government, but it's a good first step. So you will start learning some different keys and tools for your own self-regulation and for theirs, and then you'll be ready to bring in more of these self-government skills that I've been talking about. So go to teachingselfgovernment.com today, get the Calm Parenting Toolkit for free, and see what else you might need, and I'll see you there.